It was a decree from higher authority, he claimed. His mission: eliminate the contenders, even if it meant sacrificing his current role. He grinned, harboring no ill will towards them. Regrettably, he must eliminate them. Was it Leonora's command, they inquired. He refuted this, stating, certainly not, it wasn't the Vixen's directive. The command came from the Demon King. He served as the Demon King's operative. Success would guarantee him a research position. A researcher post would be his reward. Had he succumbed to darkness, Kai wondered. Consumed by ambition, fixated on studying monsters. Monsters defied human understanding, Steady declared. He unleashed his monstrous forces. Kanzaki countered with her abilities. Her magic faltered, they overwhelmed her. Kai intervened, rescuing her. This thrilled Steady immensely. He was awestruck by his abilities. Kai proceeded, eliminating the remaining creatures. He dispatched nearly a dozen of them. Steady was now enraged. Since Kai initially lacked significant strength, he used assessment on Steady and found all his attributes were meager. But most striking was that he also possessed control powers like Kanzaki, but amplified. This explained Kanzaki's neutralized power. Steady was rattled. He resorted to a desperate measure. Left with no alternative, he informed Kai he would understand soon. Kai leaped to strike, wanting to conserve time. Abruptly, a colossal crimson dragon breathed fire. This was Steady's ultimate weapon. The dragon launched rocks. Kai urged Narumi to escape with Kanzaki. As the imminent assault approached, Kai utilized his power again to pinpoint the dragon's vulnerability. It was its neck. He attempted severing it, but his offensive strength was insufficient. Suddenly, Orishur materialized and assaulted the dragon, and then commenced bragging about inflicting pain. But the dragon retaliated. Kai suggested to Orishur they vanquish the beast together. Orishur inquired why he required assistance, to which Kai responded he could identify vulnerabilities, but lacked sufficient offensive capability. Orishur was obstinate and declared he needed no help from a novice, but they had no time for such nonsense. As the dragon launched another attack, the dragon unleashed flames at Orishur, and he finally agreed to collaborate with Kai. Kai revealed its vulnerability, a scale upon its neck. Kai intended to distract it, while Orishur would strike the weak spot. Steady commanded the dragon to eliminate them. The dragon again charged towards them, and Kai diverted its attention while Orishur struck the vulnerability. This sent the dragon plummeting. The dragon was vanquished, and Kai inquired if Steady had anything remaining, as his ultimate move had failed. Steady stated that he possessed other creatures, but alas, Shuji and the others had already bested them all. Steady attempted to flee, but Narumi apprehended him. Kai requested him to reveal everything, and he readily consented as he was a craven. But before he could divulge anything, his form became violet, and he perished. A hex was placed upon him that would terminate him instantly if he attempted to disclose information. The following day, the contenders confronted Leonora upon her arrival, as she was the one who entrusted Steady with authority. She expressed remorse and clarified that she didn't anticipate that a feeble demon tamer such as him could inflict so much havoc. Candidates were astonished to learn that she was aware Steady was a demon tamer. They inquired if she knew he was a demon. Then, why did she permit him to be near them? To her credit, she stated that she had already informed them their preparation would be more demanding, and therefore what occurred was simply a component of it. Gaius faulted them for lacking vigilance in noticing a nighttime blaze. Leonora informed them they all would subsequently visit the royal metropolis, concentrating on the unveiling of the champion nominees. A procession would be conducted in the royal city, and they would take the platform as principal performers. That evening, they all departed for the capital, and after nightfall, they encamped in a meadow. While dining, Orishur informed his subordinates there were approximately 30 guards with them, and they were genuinely not particularly formidable. He declared it was the moment to initiate their scheme. They could effortlessly overwhelm them in numbers. He requested one of his followers to summon Narumi and his contingent. Kai was attending to his discourse, and he concurred that few soldiers were escorting them. Gaius and Leonora felt certain of victory. They believed they could handle them alone. He approached Shuji, requesting a conversation. Later, Orishur and Narumi met in the nearby woods. They prepared to assault the troops. Shuji and the other contenders intervened to halt them. Shuji revealed he knew about Orishur targeting Leonora. Orishur was stunned his scheme was uncovered. They attempted to reason with him, suggesting alternative solutions beyond simply eliminating them. Orishur accused Shuji of only talking. He questioned Shuji about having a strategy. Shuji responded. He would serve as a decoy and conquer the Demon King, ensuring everyone's protection in return. Orishur rejected the proposition and ordered him aside. Shuji and his companions refused passage, unable to reach an agreement. A brawl erupted unexpectedly. Two guards entered and instructed them to rest, due to an early departure the following day. Orishur departed, stating his intolerance for feebleness, and further conversation was pointless. They arrived at the kingdom's capital the next morning. The festivities caused massive congestion. Onlookers were astonished by the hero hopefuls. The populace displayed immense confidence in them. At the palace, Holy Knight Reigns welcomed them, suggesting they relax initially. All contenders were delighted by the regal reception, luxurious accommodations, and warm baths. They received top-notch cuisine. Kai sought further knowledge. Numerous sentinels were present. He noticed their escorting knight. Rionese discussed his impressions of the aspirants with his troops, remarking on their exceptional strength for their youth. A soldier expressed concern about granting the hero candidates access to the royal city would definitely provoke those devils into action. Reigns assured them there was no need for concern, as the contenders were capable and could handle anything. Kai had further inquiries, so he decided to visit the town after dark. He entered a tavern and purchased beer and refreshments. Folks were discussing the heroic candidates and how they appeared like ordinary youngsters. He observed the locals were more fearful of the sanctuary than the monarch or aristocracy. He requested the barkeep to share more information. He explained he was a newcomer to the community, therefore he lacked knowledge. The barkeeper recounted the tale of the Dark Lord and his assaults on the realm. He further revealed the Dark Lord could entice humans with immense power. He also described how the Dark Lord's disciples destroyed a noble mansion. A few days prior, Kai departed the tavern, contemplating how the contender's presence in the capital was certainly not ideal. Kenzaki unexpectedly approached him filled with concern. He informed her he was collecting intel. As they were in unfamiliar territory, she was clearly anxious and offered assistance, but he declined and she disliked his demeanor. After a brief exchange, he accepted her help. He requested she gather data on the king's city. She departed to collect information, as did Kai, but an eavesdropper overheard their dialogue. The man grinned, watching her leave. Kai returned to his quarters after an exhausting exploration. He uncovered nothing significant, but he learned of a new adversary. He suddenly detected sounds from outside. Exiting, he found the other contenders assembled. Upon inquiring, he learned Kenzaki vanished. They hadn't noticed his absence either, since he had no roommate. When questioned, he claimed ignorance. Shoji deduced she wasn't in the palace. As sunrise neared, they should search for her. They dispersed to find her. Kai discovered her student identification dropped on the road. The moment he retrieved it, 4 masked assailants jumped him, but his reflexes were incredibly swift. He immediately neutralized 3 individuals. He inquired about the 4th man's identity, as they were all quite amateur operatives. The 4th operative was too shocked to flee, and Kai demanded he reveal all his knowledge. Meanwhile, inside a fortress-like structure, Kanzaki was bound and captive. 2 operatives were questioning her, but she remained silent. They sought information about the prospective heroes. When they realized she wasn't complying, 1 operative tore her top. Unbeknownst to them, Kai had already infiltrated and observed them. He utilized his assessment abilities and perceived they were quite feeble. He was astonished she was apprehended by such frail individuals. He swiftly eliminated them. Kanzaki was mortified to see him in her vulnerable condition. He freed her restraints and prepared to depart, when he detected someone approaching rapidly. It was Reigns the Sacred Knight, and he assaulted them instantly, but they both evaded his strike. He grinned and declared he absolutely must eliminate them. In addition to being the Hallowed Knight, he was also the commander of the Demon King's forces. Kai stated the nation was near its demise, due to how even the capital was teeming with adversaries. Kai used his judgment and observed Rainey's was a formidable combat. He was a well-rounded individual. They clashed again, and Kai successfully dodged his blade. But then Reigns utilized fire magic, which caught Kai unaware. He evaded the assault once more. But at that moment, Reigns enveloped his blade in flames, declaring Kai-san. But Kai swiftly drew his firearm and fired directly at his temple. Reigns collapsed and perished. Kai regretted using his pistol for such a purpose. Due to limited ammunition, he lacked alternatives. He must master hand-to-hand combat to endure in this realm. Kanzaki was astonished by the sight of a gun and expressed her fright. Discovering a classmate possessed a firearm, he informed her it was standard issue for a contract killer. She expressed gratitude. He inquired about her and used dominance ability. She responded that the chains binding her hands somehow nullified her powers. They were departing, and she informed him those guys were attempting an assault. Every single classmate, but he was already aware. While questioning the fourth individual he had apprehended earlier, the fourth guy revealed they had orders to eliminate all the hero hopefuls, and it was this person who disclosed Kanzaki's whereabouts. They intended to utilize her as a captive during their attack on the rest. What they couldn't comprehend was his survival of the fatal hex. Like how Steady perished, this indicated it wasn't a demon's doing. This implied some people were against them. It was nearly daybreak, and Shuji located them, relieved to see her. Well, Kai divulged everything concerning the Demon King's set, and how fellow humans were also adversaries of humanity. The current dilemma was their inability to discern human foes. Unlike with creatures, this signified everyone must exercise increased vigilance. They chose to keep it from Leonora. She'd just tell them to examine it themselves. So they opted to assemble everyone and determine a plan. Vapor materialized around them. More cultists encircled them. They prepared for battle. Not just these three. Every candidate group was trapped by the men. Kai counted 6 of them. Their stats were clearly inferior to Rain's, yet they possessed strength. The 6 men lunged at them. Kanzaki used her abilities to stop them. Kai impaled their heads with blades, killing them immediately. Shuji felt uneasy witnessing it. They were all people. Shuji attempted to argue. Kai silenced him, declaring them adversaries. Ultimately, a lone cultist assaulted Shuji, and he attempted to reason with him. But the cultist claimed he was merely serving his leader. Kanzaki was prepared to utilize her abilities once more. But Kai intervened, stating he desired Shuji to eliminate the man. Shuji shattered the man's weapon and urged him to yield if he wished to survive. But the man was obstinate, and he attacked Shuji, wounding his hand in a counteroffensive. Shuji lacerated his body. The man was whimpering, and Shuji considered abandoning him to perish. But Kai instructed him to finish him immediately, or else he could pose a danger. Shuji was hesitant, but he ultimately carried out Kai's command. Meanwhile, Orishur and his followers also vanquished all the men. The final man was ruthless, eliminated by Orishur power. Rina and the others struggled to slay humans. And aside from Rina, the other girls sustained injuries. Abruptly, Leonora materialized at the scene and inquired about granting them a passing mark. The men became more enraged upon seeing Leonora, and she stated that as they were her chosen individuals, her assistance was a natural course of action when peril faced them. One man remarked on her lack of intimate experience, questioning her capability. She mocked them as mere novices, enticed by the Devil King, and she never truly viewed them as adversaries. The men simultaneously lunged at her, and she utilized her dominance to immobilize them. The men were rendered immobile, and Rina remarked on the similarity of her powers to Kanzaki. But Leonora forbade such comparisons, asserting the complete superiority of her domination abilities. From scope to potency, Rina inquired about their rescue, to which she responded that she had previously mentioned granting a passing mark. They expressed gratitude for her protection. One man grasped her garment and implored her to acknowledge them and liberate them. She glanced down and expressed remorse to the man for his survival. She then exerted her influence over all the contenders and commanded them to eliminate the men on the ground. Their forms commenced moving independently, and they all slaughtered the men involuntarily. Such was Leonora's might. Kai and Kanzaki observed everything from afar, and Kanzaki was astonished by her capacity to manipulate numerous individuals simultaneously. Her scope and prowess were entirely on another plane. 12 hours following the assault, all the contenders reconvened in the chamber. Many were in a dreadful condition and traumatized. Narumi declared he wouldn't allow her escape, as she compelled the contenders to kill unwillingly. Shuji faulted himself for his delayed arrival, but Kai clarified it wouldn't have altered anything, as none possessed sufficient strength to defy Leonora. Kai was certain that with the demon army's leader vanquished, they couldn't act for some time. He requested Kanzaki's company, She inquired about his reason, and he replied, to counter Leonora's mind control. He needed assistance from someone with comparable abilities. He asked her to control him. She became embarrassed and blushed. Following the cult's defeat, the kingdom threw a huge celebration, honoring the arrival of the hero candidates. The hero candidates demonstrated their strength, fighting the Demon King cult. The capital city welcomed them warmly. With all candidates assembled, Leonora requested their return to the temple city. Alpha Kai clarified to the group. It was the moniker of their summoned city. He believed it was under Leonora's dominion. He inquired if Leonora was accompanying them. She answered she had unfinished business. She would entrust them to Gaia's protection. Rena expressed a desire to return. Their living quarters were incinerated. Rena observed a girl appearing feverish, unable to respond to inquiries. She was terrified of Leonora. Leonora departed with a smirk. The candidates harbored animosity towards her. Gaius escorted the candidates to their endpoint. At nightfall, they encamped. Erishur and company ventured into the woods. Kensu questioned Kaisen Tant that evening. He responded Leonora was absent. The soldiers were feeble. It was the optimal moment to eliminate Gaius. He had no grounds to hinder them. Had simply relished the spectacle. Meantime, Narumi had escorted Gaius deep within the woods, claiming he spotted a colossal creature. Gaius fell for his ruse as the path went towards the royal city, and a beast lurking nearby was perilous. Abruptly, Erishur assaulted Gaius from behind with maximum force. Gaius was unprepared for the onslaught, and so he absorbed the blow and commenced bleeding. Erishur informed him that even his strongest strike couldn't eliminate him. Gaius was unsteady, and he unexpectedly triggered a landmine, which detonated. Erishur grinned and stated it was all an ambush laid for him. Gaius utilized Manhwa for protection, but he remained severely wounded. Gaius expressed his disillusionment, as he never anticipated him to waylay him thusly. Without warning, the entirety of Arashi's posse encircled the elder. Witnessing the seriousness of the predicament, Gaius launched a glowing orb skyward. It resembled pyrotechnics. Kanzaki and Kai observed this remotely. Kai commented on Arashi's blunder. The orb was an SOS beacon. Soldiers noticed it and headed that way. They couldn't arrive. Kai intercepted and eliminated them. Meanwhile, contenders pummeled Gaius. He struggled against their abilities. He lost an arm and was drenched in crimson. Erishur praised his resilience for his age. Narumi mentioned the SOS and explained he was stalling. Gaius said it was no longer necessary. Leonora entered grinning. She remarked Gaius was trapped. The contenders were stunned. Concurrently, Shuji, Reina, and other contenders spotted Kanzaki, due to his disdain for the peaceful approaches of his. Shuji inquired if the others shared his sentiment, and Reina rose and declared her support for Erishur. Leonora chuckled and remarked they were still squabbling amongst themselves. She added that at this juncture, they were culpable for initiating an uprising. She then questioned if they anticipated her part, even if they were to halt the insurrection immediately. She then summoned a massive whirlwind and wounded everyone. Shuji was stressed witnessing everyone's injuries, but Erishur urged him to relax and stated that if he desired to safeguard everyone, then he must steel himself or all would perish. Shuji grasped the predicament as there was no alternative. He prepared to battle, as did Reina and the others. Leonora declared she would demonstrate the disparity between them. Meanwhile, nearby, Kanzaki inquired of Kai their next course of action. He informed her that once Leonora uses her power to subjugate them, then he would participate. Until then, they should have faith in the other contenders. The contenders were prepared to battle. Leonora and Gaius rose and stated he was feeble, but he still desired to combat for her. Leonora mended all his injuries, and he was stronger than before to fight. Contenders were afraid, as they did so much to trap Gaius. But now he returned. Rena informed him their numbers had grown too, so they would compensate. Leonora stated they could assault her any time. They yearned for her. The clash would be a trial for them. She proclaimed if they couldn't defeat her, then they couldn't be a champion after all. Soon the brawl commenced, and Gaius observed it was challenging to fight Shuji. With his enchanted blade, Leonora utilized water magic to strike Shuji. But Reina neutralized it, yet he was still harmed by the assault. They attacked Leonora, but none of the strikes could even graze her. Meanwhile, Kai was concealed in the darkness, and he used his discernment to assess Leonora's attributes. And he observed that while she was a formidable sorceress, her protection was frail. One solid physical blow would suffice. But Gaius obstructed their path. Erasure requested Shuji handle Gaius and defeat Leonora. Shuji encountered a dilemma. His magic was ineffective against her. One contender provided him a blade of steel, and Leonora remarked that he now appeared prepared for battle. Finally, the other contenders couldn't aid Shuji, as their abilities were useless against her, and they couldn't assist Erasure, as he was engaged in close-quarters combat. Erasure was capable of confronting Gaius directly, because although he was mended, his endurance was depleted, but he also couldn't utilize his explosive force. So once again, it was balanced. Leonora was employing distant assaults on Shuji, preventing him from approaching her with his blade. There had to be a way to approach and overcome her, but it eluded him. Leonora grinned and remarked it was typical of Shuji, since few in the nation could evade her strikes. It remained a lopsided fight, too distant to strike. He couldn't depend on the other contenders. Shuji charged at full tilt and neutralized her wind assaults. She employed earth and fire offensives, but he sidestepped them. She observed him subconsciously utilizing magic defensively, meaning he was developing rapidly. She felt a flicker of fear, but she hurled him back with her might. Meanwhile, Erasure found his powers depleted and pondered how to best Gaia. Gaius sliced his stomach with a single blow. Erasure was enraged at his failure to vanquish an elder. He dropped to his knees, and Gaius informed him this was his limit. Powerless Erasure claimed he was destined for greatness. He then struck him fiercely, sending the elder crashing down. Bleeding anew, victory was his. Shuji believed he had to triumph, or his companions would face consequences. A threatening presence enveloped him. Leonora observed his remarkable endurance, but remained calm, confident he couldn't reach her. She was mistaken in a flash. Shuji stood before her and grazed her hand. It was unbelievable to her. She had no moment to spare. Shuji was now directly behind her. She used water abilities to repel him. She somehow realized he had acquired instantaneous movement. He utilized his newfound ability again, and was mere inches from severing her neck. Abruptly, she ordered him to kneel. He was frozen, and she grinned and stated she didn't want to use it, but her hand was forced. Kai observed Shed played her ace, and he urged Kanzaki to make a move. Leonora smiled slyly and remarked she hadn't planned on using subjugation magic, but Shuji compelled her. He lay at her feet motionless. Fellow contenders raced to rescue Shuji, but Leonora commanded them to halt, and they froze mid-action. Leonora declared they all performed admirably, and therefore Shed grant them a satisfactory mark. She mentioned she hadn't foreseen Gaius' defeat, but ultimately he was merely a soldier expendable. As long as she maintained control, there would be no issue. The contenders were despairing, and without a strategy, defeat would be certain. She informed everyone the reason for summoning candidates was for the opportune moment, to command them at will, lest they become dangers. 3 blades launched from behind. She evaded them effortlessly. She knew he was concealed. It was Kai. He confirmed it. Surprised by her notice of someone unremarkable, she sensed something peculiar initially. He was always unusual. She felt let down. He joined a hopeless fight. She demanded stillness. He fell under her enchantment. Mid-explanation, a shot struck her shoulder. Astonished, he moved and fired. Despite her spell, how? Absolutely certain her magic was affecting him. He shot her stomach again. She couldn't comprehend the weapon. Firearms didn't exist in her realm. Her defenses were overwhelmed. He clarified what a gun was, adding he was low on ammo and preferred not to use them. He harnessed her attack, but only his cloak was singed, and he vanished. Instantly, he reappeared behind her, gun pointed at her head. He stated he knew she wasn't proficient in close combat, and her enslavement magic was ineffective on him. She was stunned and disbelieving. Kai took a chance and succeeded. The key was Kanzaki. That evening, when he requested Kanzaki to control him, he informed her the initially cast skill would take precedence over subsequently cast abilities, meaning if she used her domination ability on him initially, it would nullify the subjugation sorcery. And because contenders possessed celestial safeguards, thus their abilities surpassed enchantment. Kanzaki was uncertain as her aptitude was inferior to Leonora's witchcraft. The identical event occurred with Steady, because he had invoked his hex prior to her. Hence he could reclaim dominion over his beasts. It was a risk, but they lacked alternatives. Currently, Leonora deduced it had to be Kanzaki, and she was right, as Kai was beneath her incantation. He declared her demise was imminent and prepared to fire. Leonora was apprehended and restrained. The shackles suppressed her magical prowess. And these were the identical manacles previously employed on Kanzaki. She inquired about Kai's intentions for her. His request was straightforward: if she would return them, then he would liberate her. She expressed regret as it was unfeasible for her. Her only option was conjuring magic for their return. Another type of magic was necessary. Kai believed her honesty; she lacked the ability for their return. He inquired about the method for sending them back. Following the Dark Lord's defeat, she stated summoning required vast energy, so they depended on their deity for summoning. In essence, their god had summoned them. Upon vanquishing the evil sovereign, the divinity would personally return them. But her assertions seemed uncertain. No prior contenders were ever returned. The Dark Lord eliminated them. Perhaps some endured, but they vanished after a brief exchange. Kai intended to eliminate her. Shuji intervened, preventing him. Shuji said he was collaborating, believing Leonora could ensure their return. Since she couldn't, he wished to retain his hero candidate status. He refused to be a betrayer in that realm. Kai questioned if they weren't already disloyal. Leonora promised to act as if nothing occurred. That evening, Shuji stated the offense of murdering a holy woman was grave, and they could face consequences. The other contenders concurred. Narumi remained on Kai's side. Shuji acknowledged eliminating her was the logical choice. But what would their actions be after her demise? Kai grasped Shuji's perspective, but in a surprising twist. He fired at Leonora directly between her eyes. Everyone was stunned to witness Leonora's body collapse, and Kai utilized his smoke bomb and vanished. Candidates were displeased with his choice and behavior. Kanzaki pondered that it boiled down to his prior scheme, previously with her. A few hours prior, when Kai and Kanzaki were strategizing, he informed her their initial goal was to apprehend Leonora and discover a method to return. Should it prove impossible, he would end her life. He understood that if he apprehended her, and a return to their realm was impossible, Shuji would endeavor to safeguard her, at which point he would eliminate her and flee. He planned to shoulder the burden of the saintess' death alone. He explained that this was why some of her protectors survived, allowing them to accuse him. He urged her to place all responsibility on him and go back to the Empire. She was uncertain if she was capable. He assured her she was. She could even leverage her abilities in discussions to ensure success. She inquired about his escape route. He advised her not to concern herself with him. Meanwhile, in a distant shadowy fortress, a man reported his unsuccessful assassination attempt on the prospective heroes to the Demon King. The Demon King told him to remain calm, as ultimately the hero. Candidates would inevitably arrive at the battlefront. The game was becoming captivating, and the Demon King was enjoying it. 48 hours after the event, Kai resided in the woods. He was near Metropolis, and it would require half a day on foot to arrive, as there was no possibility he would be permitted entrance. After eliminating the Saintess, he chose to slip in under cover of darkness. He needed to acquire funds, and he spotted a pub within the tavern. It was a pleasant ambience, and someone inquired about his origin. He fabricated a story about being from a neighboring village, and now he was seeking employment. The man suggested he become a mercenary. He would have to accept tasks from the guild and would be compensated. He also informed him that the guild desperately required new recruits, so they wouldn't even request identification. He lodged at an inn, and fortunately nobody recognized him. He proceeded to the guild's headquarters and observed a variety of individuals. He approached the front desk and enrolled. He was questioned about his identity, background, and birthplace, so he used an alias, Siren, and fabricated a story about the Demon King's forces decimating his village. Siren was his usual moniker in reality as well. The clerk outlined the guild's operations. There were tiers from A to F, Higher placement meant greater compensation. As a novice, he was designated an F-rank adventurer. He proceeded to the job board to select his initial assignment, and shortly after a trio approached to harass him. They were mocking him, and he wasn't amused. This tale's central figure, Araki Kai, appeared to those around him as a typical, melancholy high school adolescent. But he was far more complex. He was a skilled contract killer who instilled fear in his targets, none of whom survived. Araki's peers disliked and harassed him due to his unsociable nature and peculiar presence. But one fateful day changed it all, when Araki and his fellow students were abruptly transported to a different realm, a land of steel and sorcery. An enigmatic herald proclaims them all to be champions, summoned to vanquish the Devil Lord. And for this formidable mission, she grants them extraordinary abilities. And naturally, Araki Kai receives the most potent of all. Well, if curiosity piques you, let's start at the genesis and uncover the truth. The sequence opens with a figure sprinting through a shadowy alleyway. He appeared distressed and apprehensive. As he halted, he glanced back and pondered his escape. Abruptly, a blade pressed against his neck. He offered the attacker riches to spare his life, but instantly, the assailant severed his throat. The following morning, a young student walked to school fatigued. His name was Araki Kai. He yawned and lamented his all-nighter. School felt dreadful. He moonlighted as a killer as he entered class. Fellow students murmured. Shuji beamed at him. He was the soccer star and class leader. Kai responded curtly and sad. In the meantime, Nagase Reina observed everything and deemed Kai impolite. She was always stylish, who eclipsed the other girls in the classroom. She approached Shuji and firmly told him that he shouldn't acknowledge people like Kai. Shuji defended him, suggesting he might be fatigued, explaining his aloofness. Another pupil abruptly entered the room. Upon noticing him, Rina commented on an even more impolite person arrived. The disrespectful student's name was Erasure Shunskai, the head of a notorious neighborhood gang. A couple of students acknowledged Erasure, but seeing Kai asleep, instead of acknowledging him, he went to his desk and shouted for him to wake up. He reached out to grab him, but Kai seized his hand first and mentioned his drowsiness and inquired about his intentions. He released his hand, and Erasure labeled him strange. Another student, Kenzaki Rin, requested silence. She was gorgeous and gifted, both in combat and writing. She was the distant and composed paramount beauty of the academy. He challenged her, but was interrupted by another girl named Hashimoto Mirai, who was a strict disciplinary committee member who truly valued rules. Observing her prepared to battle Erasure, a lad named Narumi Yoshia informed her that Erasure would simply crush her. Yoshia was a superficial and flippant fellow. Everybody quickly returned to their places. This was Shinzo High, freshman year course, and it was just a normal day in a classroom with numerous issues. Kai was remaining hidden when he abruptly felt something, an odd feeling originating beneath Shuji's feet. A vibrant azure light started emanating from the ground, and a mystical rune circle materialized. Shortly, everyone in the room saw it and were bewildered and astonished. The rune circle expanded in size and encompassed the whole classroom floor. Shuji directed everyone to exit the classroom, but Kai understood they wouldn't arrive on time. A radiant light abruptly overwhelmed everyone's vision. They were instantly transported into an ancient-looking fortress. Everyone lay unconscious upon the floor, and Kai was the initial one to regain awareness. He observed the structure was constructed of stone, with numerous massive columns for refuge, and there was a single escape route. Gradually, the other pupils started to revive. Everyone felt frantic, but Shuji soothed them. And Kai felt comforted that Shuji was present, an individual who could prevent the entire class from losing their calm. Erasure arose and declared they couldn't squander time, and he commanded his 2 followers to accompany him. Kai halted him and stated he detected approaching footsteps, originating beyond the entrance. Kai perceived a male and a female near. The portal swung open, and a young lady and an elderly gentleman walked in. They resembled a medieval knight and princess, and donned unique and vintage flowing garments with capes. The young lady acknowledged the students, commending their prowess and dubbing them prospective heroes. The students were astonished by their presence. Kai assessed the pair and deduced the man possessed the build of a swordsman, and he was also on guard. Regarding the girl, he detected subtle musculature, but she appeared quite ordinary to him. The young lady presented herself as Leonora, the high priestess of the sacred nation of Digoris, and her companion was Gaius, a knight and her guardian. Orishur admitted his unfamiliarity with the nation and inquired if she was jesting. The young lady insisted she was being sincere. Shuji stepped forward and recounted their unexpected arrival, explaining their slight anxiety. The last commenced elucidating the whole affair. She started by declaring their summoning to an alternate reality, as mankind's beacon of hope to vanquish the wicked Dark Lord. They were the alternate dimension's heroic prospects. Accepting such a notion was challenging for the pupils. Gaius cautioned Orishur to mind his words, while conversing with the nation's sacred figure. Orishur remained unperturbed, prompting Gaius to unsheathe his blade. But Leonora calmed him. Orishur lunged at Gaius, and Kai marveled at his audacity. Before Orishur could initiate an assault, Gaius hurled his sword, inflicting a minor head wound. His strike was too swift for anyone to witness. Leonora expressed remorse for his hostility and vowed to thoroughly clarify everything, but required their complete silence and attention. Her composure abruptly shifted from tranquil to menacing. She elaborated that due to the Dark Lord's incursion, that realm's humanity faced annihilation. The land of Digoris kept fighting back, but they lacked the strength to fully repel the attack. Kai felt the tale was quite familiar. She added they were humanity's final chance. Hearing this, the students responded they couldn't manage it, since they'd never battled. Some girls were already weeping. Gaia mentioned it might seem improbable, but they must attempt, because there was no path back to their home realm unless they vanquished the Demon King. The students were further stunned by this news. Kai realized he just said it to inspire them. He believed people who had always known peace couldn't abruptly start slaying, for that they required skill and aptitude. Orishur rose with blood on his head and condemned them for ordering them around. He continued that he despised people like them. Gaius observed Orish's spirit remained defiant and pondered if he could be a valuable fighter. Gaius gripped his blade and chose to eliminate Orishur, as he might pose a threat. But before he could act, he observed Leonora mending Orish's injury. She clarified that the force she used was called the system and was bestowed upon them by their deities. She made it easier for them and stated it was similar to magic from their realm. Kai realized she was familiar with their customs and questioned if she had before. Also brought forth individuals from their world. She approached Shuji, while explaining the power was why she summoned them. There she lifted her hands, and Shuji's wrist illuminated, and shortly he possessed a sword of light. She elaborated that they could utilize the system's power and unlock their inherent gifts of divine safeguard. She admitted she had a self-serving plea, as she beckoned them all, and now they were unable to depart. Upon obtaining his abilities, he could access Leonora's statistics. His irises turned crimson. Leonora informed him he had gained the power of discernment, an uncommon gift. The ability allowed him to perceive his target's attributes and particulars. He tested his newfound powers on himself, revealing his own data. Orishur also utilized his capabilities and mocked Kai, suggesting he merely acquired a new IQ. Kai observed the students behaving arrogantly. They possessed limited knowledge of the world. Their powers were transient and revocable. He remained calm, possessing numerous alternative methods of elimination. Following the acquisition of powers, Leonora advised them to rest. At nightfall, the hero candidates were escorted to individual quarters. Kai stealthily exited his window, seeking further knowledge. Sentinels were on patrol outside, discussing the perceived frailty of the hero candidates. They ridiculed the selection of these children to combat the demon lord. One remarked the holy person surely possesses knowledge, which they lacked. Kai overheard their conversation completely. He utilized his assessment ability to examine the attributes of a guard and discovered he solely knew blade skills. He shortly departed, seeking further intel. He had also discovered the town's layout, a fortified settlement. He desired entry to the interior keep, but the entrances were intensely protected. Infiltration was difficult. He opted to avoid haste and return later. Meanwhile, in a meadow, Rina sought a suitable location with her two companions. They intended to hone their newfound abilities. They commenced summoning their respective elements and analyzing them. As Rina was inquisitive to understand the celestial protection matter, Kai was concealed within, shrubbery observing them when he abruptly sensed an odd feeling. The ladies also detected a peculiar sound emanating from the thicket. It resembled a colossal lizard, and it was drawn to the girl's mystical power. Kai swiftly used his abilities to assess the beast's attributes, and he was stunned by its formidable power. The creature bellowed and pursued the girls. Kai deduced the lizard was potent and hostile, but it only charged straight ahead and lacked intellect. He hurled a blade at it, and the blade pierced its thick hide. Meanwhile, Rena tripped and tumbled. The beast had reached her and was poised to trample her. It abruptly froze. The girls surveyed their surroundings. They spotted a blade embedded in its skull. It was hemorrhaging. They pondered if someone rescued her. They opted to flee. Kai had no motive to assist them, but his ethics compelled him to act. He mused. Survival would be challenging there, if such creatures roamed free. He approached the beast's remains to retrieve his blade. When he felt a presence nearby, he concealed himself behind the carcass and scanned his surroundings, but saw no one. He returned to his quarters to evade conflict. After his departure, a figure emerged from behind a barrier. The individual was cloaked, obscuring their visage. The figure crushed the monster's skull. Extracting its eyes, he muttered his disappointment after witnessing the incompetence of the hero hopefuls. But Kai had a similar scent. The following sunrise, Gaius presented the deceased monster's corpse to the hero trainees, who were stunned by the sight. Gaius clarified that the creature was discovered lifeless the previous evening near the royal city. He added that the Demon King had driven the beasts into a frenzy, causing them to hunger for human flesh. He informed the hero hopefuls they would be battling creatures like that beast. Gaius inquired of Steady, the analyst, if he discovered anything unusual about the creature, and he responded that there were indications of witchcraft being employed, likely by a fiend above average rank. He stated perhaps they were exploring to observe the caliber of the new hero recruits. Kai pondered if sorcery differed from magic, as it was a novel term utilized by the scientists. Shiji questioned if it implied the monster was manipulated by a devil. Steady clarified that potent devils can employ enslavement incantations, and thus could command weaker beasts. Gaius pulled Steady away, but he desired to elaborate further. Kai considered Steady a valuable asset in acquiring knowledge. He could utilize his assistance. He abruptly recognized the actual nature of those eyes. He sensed previously yesterday belonged to a devil. The devil was adept. Since Kai hardly detected it, he suspected the demon was nearby. In that instant, he sensed someone's gaze. Erishur informed Gaius. Returning home required the demon's demise. Regardless, he wasn't planning a long stay. The other pupils concurred. Kai believed they should swiftly grasp the gravity of the reality. Abruptly, Leonora entered, urging them to be brave. They simply lacked knowledge of their abilities. Practice was all they required. Being from another realm, their development would differ from the natives. A week passed since training commenced. Kai perused books in the library, comprehending every character of the foreign language. He found it peculiar that they could communicate at all. Initially, his discernment wasn't combat ready, so he was excluded from the exercises, but was granted entry to the archives. He couldn't locate many texts on their heritage and traditions, or even regarding devils. The top 5 amongst them were Narumi, the wind manipulator, Erishur with his explosive abilities, Kinzaki with her telekinetic gifts, Hashimoto with her earth control, and Rina with her pyrokinetic skills. Nevertheless, there existed another individual with a remarkably rapid development pace. It was Shuji. He surpassed the strength of his swordsmanship mentors. Kai utilized his discernment and observed all his attributes were above B level, and merely a week prior they were below D level. Abruptly, 2 lads approached Kai and commenced mocking him, and he perceived that even the others were belittling him. They were becoming cocky after acquiring their newfound abilities. One of the lads attempted to harass Kai, but Kai cunningly tossed him to the floor. Leonora and Gaius reached the practice area. She declared that, since they all developed faster than anticipated, she chose to accelerate their agenda. Narumi inquired if she intended to deploy them against the Dark Lord, but she dismissed it. stating she wanted them to engage in monster combat practice. Everyone appeared apprehensive upon hearing this. The following day, Gaius and Leonora escorted all the hero hopefuls to a forest clearing, and Gaius clarified they were there for battle exercises. It was an area teeming with Esturso. They couldn't maneuver freely as a unit. Therefore, they would be split into pairs or trios. Upon hearing this news, all the hero candidates formed their own alliances, isolating Kai and Kanzaki. They were compelled to collaborate. Kai believed she possessed a self-assured and indifferent demeanor, and she felt pleased catching his gaze. Meanwhile, Leonora declared a unique event. The squad defeating the most creatures would get an unexpected prize. The training exercises soon commenced. Kanzaki informed Kai her abilities surpassed everyone. She didn't require his assistance. She requested he not obstruct her. Kai agreed and stated he would entrust everything to her. She inquired if he lacked self-respect. He detected 4 beings nearby concealed. A monster charged, and Kanzaki utilized her powers. Her power was known as domination, an ability imposing the user's commands on the target. She commanded the goblin to prostrate, and it obeyed. She appeared noticeably fatigued after a short time. She clarified she often grew weary when utilizing her powers excessively because it depleted significant mana. He urged her to eliminate the goblin because another creature was going to strike, but she was a bit reluctant because to her, the creature seemed somewhat human. Kai brought her to her senses by stating it was a beast, which had attempted an assault earlier. He grabbed a rock and deduced she was a naive pupil from Japan who was accustomed to tranquility. He was fiddling with the rock when abruptly 3 more goblins materialized. She commanded the goblins to yield and requested Kai assist her, rather than remaining idle. Kai responded she was the one who told him not to interfere. She exhaled and directed the goblins to break their own necks, and this eliminated them. He was astonished she could impose such commands, to which she answered the harder the command, the smaller the likelihood of achievement. She was repulsed by the goblin's remains. Kai soothed her with sagacious words. She inquired about his composure-lacking abilities. He advised her to disregard his well-being. It was his forte. He questioned her desire for departure. If fear consumed her, she proudly refuted the suggestion. He recognized her facade of bravery. He conceded her competence. Narumi and Hashimoto fled from a beast. It possessed overwhelming strength. Escape was impossible. They resolved to confront the creature together, harnessing their wind and earth energies. They assaulted the monster with a colossal rock. It inflicted minimal damage. They were powerless and uncertain. Kanzaki yearned for her homeland. Her grandfather's upbringing remained unrequited. She longed to demonstrate her maturity. She was deep in thought. Kai inquired if she wanted to proceed. They might get disoriented. They engaged in playful teasing. She pondered Kai's enigmatic and obstinate nature. They were frolicking when a sudden clamor erupted. Kanzaki identified Hashimoto's voice. Kai questioned their course of action. She insisted on assisting her. Hashimoto was hurled meters away by the creature. She was lacerated and hemorrhaging. She urged Narumi to flee. The beast was poised to strike him as well. Kanzaki commanded the monster to halt. Narumi expressed gratitude. She declared the monster's formidable power. It couldn't be restrained for long. Kai inquired about Hashimoto's condition. He confirmed she was alive, but gravely wounded. Kai instructed him to carry her and escape. He hesitated to depart. Witnessing her state, he took his leave. Upon leaving, Kai utilized his abilities to examine the creature's attributes and was astonished to observe remarkably high values. Particularly the defense, he realized his assaults would inflict minimal harm. He also discerned it was a mutation and pondered its true nature. Kanzaki exclaimed she could endure no longer. He assured her she had provided ample time, and they should retreat as well. She concurred, assessing the circumstances, but her legs were incapacitated, having exhausted all her energy halting the beast. Observing the gravity of the predicament, Kai deployed a smoke bomb. This granted him a moment to seize Kanzaki and conceal themselves. She was slightly discomposed being held. She inquired about the smoke. He clarified it was a smoke device, crafted during their training sessions. He wasn't being truthful. He possessed gear before his summoning. Due to limited resources, he avoided frivolous use. They were fundamental assassination tools. Kanzaki expressed remorse. She had suggested the rescue mission, and ironically required rescuing herself. Kai discouraged apologies, suggesting gratitude instead. A playful exchange ensued. She proposed retreat. He deemed it unnecessary. They observed Shuji and company arriving. Acting decisively, he engaged the bear for harming his companions. Shuji rapidly struck the creature, wounding its limb. Rina intervened, unleashing fiery abilities. Its impact was minimal, merely hindering it. They renewed their assault. Meanwhile, a distant observer watched. A seasoned assassin demon Delphis. Delphis smiled to himself. The armored beast couldn't defeat the hero hopefuls due to their rapid development. He admired their composure. Especially Shuji, it was meant to be a reconnaissance task. It was time for an adjustment. He chose to finish them there. Meanwhile, Shoji and his companions overcame the creature. Delphos grinned and prepared to strike. A blade at his throat stopped him. It was Kai. Delphis was shocked by the ambush. He was tense and puzzled how Kai got behind him. He needed a fast escape. Kai cut his legs and dropped him. He demanded silence, keeping Shuji and the others unaware. Kai offered to deal answers for freedom. Delphis wasn't ready to yield. He had no alternative. Kai held the advantage. Kai pondered if his recent observer was just him. Kai stated they were under surveillance. His strategy was letting Shuji and company engage. To draw him out, interrupting him, Kai demanded answers. Being new arrivals, he must answer all questions. Delphis grinned and refused. But Kai slashed his hands also. Cooperation would be simpler. Delphis cautioned against underestimation. He ingested a carried toxin, resulting in immediate death. Kai realized the Demon King's forces would prove formidable adversaries. Kinzaki appeared abruptly, shocked by the nearby corpse. Kai inquired about her observation time. She replied since the individual was grounded. He informed her that the deceased fiend was a hitman from the Devil King's forces, and the beast from before was his puppet. And way back when the initial reptile creature was spotted, that also was his handiwork. She was slightly afraid to learn that the Devil King was aiming to eliminate the champion hopefuls. She inquired how he detected the murderer when nobody else managed to. He felt there was no need to conceal his mystery, and he admitted to her his kin was involved in the killing trade profession, so he could sense he was a fellow professional. Kanzaki was stunned by this disclosure. He stated it was up to her to trust him, and further requested her to keep quiet about the corpse, as the champion hopefuls were already disturbed by Hashimoto's state. She consented, and remarked that she had no idea he was so concerned for them, to which he responded that it was merely due to their lack of combat experience. Like himself, all the champion hopefuls assembled near Hashimoto, badly wounded and sprawled on the ground. A pupil named Hano, possessing healing abilities, settled nearby and employed her gifts to mend her. Everyone was astonished witnessing her talents. She declared Hashimoto would recover in roughly 60 minutes. Hero hopefuls commended Shuji for conquering the beast. Abruptly, Leonora and Gaius entered, and the candidates inquired their whereabouts and why they didn't assist when necessary. Gaius clarified he was observing them constantly and that it would be unwise to rescue them repeatedly. Shuji stated the situation was dire and Hashimoto might perish, to which Gaius responded, risking one's life was inherent in practical training, military exercises mirroring future battles. Henceforth, they shouldn't whine. Shuji challenged him regarding his claim of only weak creatures in the zone. How did the armored beast emerge? Leonora stated it was due to the demonic killer, as armored beasts shouldn't be in that zone. Gaius and Leonora chose to reinforce their protections, unaware Kai had eliminated the assassin. Leonora added they should elevate their training regimen. At their current skill, they would perish. Everyone felt fear upon hearing that, and Shuji attempted to reason with her, but she insisted gaining power was the sole path to survival. Orishir resented being commanded, and he intervened to speak with Leonora. But Gaia halted him and declared they were all Leonora's puppets, and they couldn't defy her commands. The atmosphere became tense, and Shuji intervened to pacify Arashi, as they had no choice but to comply. Gaius admired Shuji and reassured the candidates, valuable assets to the nation. No harm would come to them, provided they behaved appropriately. Orishir remained discontent. He unleashed his destructive force on Gaius. Gaius swiftly dodged the attack, He struck Erasure forcefully, sending him crashing down, declaring their weakness and warning of escalating challenges. Things would intensify. He and Leonora departed. Erasure rose bloodied and vowed vengeance against Gaius. The following day arrived. The scientist oversaw the training session. After a quick debriefing on the previous events, he announced a monster battle exercise. At his laboratory, within the lab, various creatures were confined. He bred these beasts for his studies. The exercise commenced. Hero candidates battled monsters. Kai observed an unexpected composure among everyone, despite being compelled to battle. Shuji informed Steady that the creatures were formidable for the contenders, but Steady responded that Leonora had instructed him to be incredibly demanding with everyone, and therefore he couldn't and wouldn't relax the exercises. Furthermore, he mentioned that aspiring heroes with colleagues like theirs shouldn't be defeated initially. He stated that the paramount factor was their determination. Shuji inquired if it would truly matter, and he answered that if executed properly, then they could enhance their strength levels and could even generate fresh variations of their abilities. Kai also joined them and informed Shuji that, based on his assessment skills, he observed that Shuji possessed a novel power. Shuji was astonished to learn this and asked Steady if he could experiment with it. Steady was eager to witness the ability firsthand, so he permitted him. Shuji utilized his fresh powers, and in a moment, he severed the monster's limb and head with a precise cut. Kai understood Shuji would no longer face an armored beast. He pondered if his discernment abilities had also improved. Kai observed someone else had also gained a new skill. It was Arashi, but he chose not to inform him. Later that evening, Arashi plotted to eliminate Gaius, restrain Leonora, and inquire about returning to their homeworld. A few other contenders supported him, and eager to depart the realm as well. Erasure invited Narumi to join for improved odds. He knew Narumi was also weary of that world. Narumi was uncertain, but ultimately decided to collaborate. The following day, Shuji practiced. Kai approached him and commented on his diligence. Shuji responded he was still inadequate and needed improvement. Kai countered that his current strength could overcome half the kingdom's knights. Shuji stated it was insufficient, as he couldn't conquer Gaia, and required greater power to safeguard everyone. Kai inquired about his opinion of Leonora and Gaia, and his response was acknowledging their use as chess pieces in their conflict, but he assured their safety. Kai inquired if he meant risking his own existence until the Dark Lord was vanquished. Shuji concurred, stating his decision was finalized, but he must be the sole combatant. He would become the nation's savior and conquer the evil one, and would attempt to bargain and ensure everyone's well-being. In return, Kai questioned if Leonora would permit him, and at that precise moment she and Gaius entered. She declared Steady responsible for the trainees' preparation. During her absence, Steady was content to contribute, mentioning she and Gaius departed afterward. Gaius questioned her certainty in her decision, to which she inquired his reasoning. He urged her to be straightforward and direct. He stated Rushi was instigating something, and she concurred, suggesting a potential uprising against them. He inquired about her next course of action. She expressed interest in their subsequent moves. The group felt apprehension about the uprising. They were prospective heroes possessing abilities. It could spell catastrophe for them. Leonora remained composed, confident in her invincibility. She proposed establishing a chain of command to quell the insurrection and permanently dismantle their resistance. She mentioned observing other dubious activities, but would postpone addressing them. Later that evening, Kai battled a creature. He eliminated it, mirroring his previous monster slaying. The initial night required a mere 13 seconds. Upon using his judgment power on himself, he discovered his level had increased. Another creature launched a surprise attack. This one proved resilient, impervious to his blades. An opportune moment to evaluate his newfound skill. He employed his new power capable of identifying the target's vulnerability. Spotting it, he instantly obliterated the creature. It was a decent ability, but insufficient for survival in that realm. He had to gain further strength. More beasts attacked him, and he effortlessly vanquished them. He required a larger adversary to evaluate his capabilities. He detected human footfalls and observed Kinzaki, and inquired about her purpose there. So late at night, she explained she was searching for him, since he was absent from the dormitory. He requested her departure, as the forest was a perilous location after dark. He was accustomed to nocturnal combat, but she was not. She silenced him and inquired about his presence there. He informed her he was assessing his newfound abilities. She inquired about the nature of his new power, but he started teasing her, and she admitted her concern for him. When questioned, she blushed and offered justifications. They were conversing. Out of the blue, they spotted smoke billowing in the distance. It was ablaze. Their quarters were ablaze. They both raced back and witnessed other applicants battling creatures. Narumi expressed his relief at seeing them both. He mentioned that upon waking, he noticed the flames and the beasts. Kai stated it was a human's act, and the mastermind had to be nearby. He instructed them to locate and apprehend the culprit. Steady materialized atop the structure and commented on their sound judgment. Kai mentioned pondering the monster's emergence, but now everything clicked. They were all beasts from his lab. He had also provided them with a potion for enhanced strength, since they were too feeble to be of use. Kai inquired about his goal and what he gained from eliminating applicants.